On today's show, we have Ned Case joining us talking college hoops and getting you ready for the weekend in college basketball. Also, we just talk about the landscape of college basketball. But before I have that conversation with Ned, I bring up something that doesn't surprise me about a local Atlanta team and something that will surprise me about a former Heisman Trophy winner. We have all that and more. Welcome back to the Fan Show. This is our midweek edition, so I hope that you're having a great work week. I hope that the office or traffic or however you're listening isn't driving you too crazy. We're here to get you through the rest of the week, and especially with some college hoops coming up. Not really a big weekend in college hoops, but still college basketball on Saturdays interesting anyways. And this is when everything obviously starts to matter with college basketball because March Madness is right around the corner. So there's going to be a lot of teams fighting to get in that national tournament to expand that resume. And hopefully help themselves before they have to get into conference tournament play. But if you follow college basketball, you know what I'm talking about with that. I'm Alex Berger, and we're having here in Atlanta, we're having very, very spring-like temperatures. It feels like it's a preview to spring. It feels like kind of the end of March. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I know usually when this happens, when it gets warmer out, the rain starts. So if you're having a rainy week, hopefully we can help cheer you up with some sports talk. Like I said in the intro, there's two things that I want to talk about, and this part of the show really doesn't have a segment, but I'm gonna name it a segment right here. A couple podcasts ago, I called this part of the show the best of the rest of the weekend. So I am going to name this the best of the rest of the midweek. And the second thing I want to talk about is a former Heisman Trophy winner, former Florida Gator quarterback that's trying a new sport that would surprise me, and a Atlanta team going through struggles that doesn't really surprise me. And I'm going to first start off with the Atlanta team, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. And according to Peachtree Hoops, reported that the Atlanta Hawks TV ratings are suffering because of the record. Now, that doesn't surprise me. Like, the Hawks are, to put it mildly, really sucking. And I'm not going to even mention the record because the record's not worth it. So it doesn't surprise me because they're not playing well on the hardwood, that that their TV ratings are plummeting. That doesn't surprise me. It's interesting, and I read the article on Peachtree Hoops that I'm getting off my iPad, and the thing about it is they compare their TV ratings to the Los Angeles Clippers. That's bad. That's terrible. Their Nelson rating right now is 0.58. Ouch. That and the thing about it is the kicker is that I know they're on Fox Sports South, so it's the Atlanta area that they broadcast majority of their games. They're not gonna at this point they're not gonna get picked up by ESPN. Maybe they'll get picked up by TNT, but I heartily doubt that. That majority of your TV revenue is coming from local viewers. And I get the Atlanta attitude is, hey, if you're not producing, there's other things I could do. I mean, it was a nice weekend this weekend. I could be at Piedmont Park. I could check out what's going on at the Fox. I could be up here in the suburbs at the Avalon. I mean, it seems like people on social media have been really enjoying Black Panther. So there, it's kind of like if you're not producing, there's other things I can do with my time. And it sounds like the city of Atlanta is saying loud and clear, there are other things I can do with my time than watch a basketball team that's barely at 500. I mean, barely, just clawing, struggling to get by to be at 500, and your TV ratings are suffering because of it. And I mean, it's no joke that to put on a TV broadcast, that is expensive. I mean, their TV budget is $30 million. So with people not watching, that's $30 million going down the drain this past season. If your budget is 30 million, and yeah, I get that it's like cameras are expensive, paychecks that you have to, especially having Dominique Wilkins and I can't think of his name that does the broadcast, but he's been doing it for a long time, and you got to pay them, and there's just a lot of expenditures going on, but I think the Hawks can take this loss in the long run, but they can't have another season like this. They can't have another season where fans just jump ship like they have. Now, I understand they're in a rebuild. I understand you have a new GM and everything, and you have new pieces in the front office, but your bottom line is falling out. Your fan base doesn't really want to pay attention. And the opposite of that was true back in 2015. It seemed like this whole city was all about the Hawks. I mean, I'll put it this way. I'm a casual Hawks fan. Yes, I've been one of these people that has contributed to not watching Hawks games. I'll admit that on air. And and I guess I'm a product of what's going on, but man, like, this doesn't surprise me, but man, the $30 million that you're just is just going down the drain, that no one's really watching, no one's really paying attention. Like I've said, this doesn't surprise me, and I think the Hawks' bottom line can make up for these losses in the long run. But the second thing I want to talk about, and I'm surprised this isn't getting as much headlines as it is, but obviously ESPN is all over this, and I definitely can see why, is Tim Tebow trying to be a professional baseball player. And last year he was in the minor league system, did all right. I think it's interesting he's in the Mets, and the Mets have an interest that they want him on their team, but obviously it's a development issue that's going on here. And I mean, the kid hasn't played Major League Baseball hasn't played baseball since his junior year of high school, because I'm assuming his senior year and all 4 years he was at Florida, it was football full time. And I don't blame him, because of what he did there at the University of Florida, obviously winning a Heisman Trophy. That, yeah, you're a 5-star prospect. You're gonna focus full time on football. But now that you're not going to be a professional football player, you got to look elsewhere. And I don't blame him, just from a long-term injury standpoint, that because there really wasn't this problem that he had in Denver. But I can see him, especially being on the New York Jets, that if there was a possibility that he became a starter at all, that he was going to take some hits, because I know the Jets don't really have, especially back then, really didn't have a great offensive line. So I feel like he's in a good spot playing a sport that isn't like football, where because baseball, guys can play forever. It's because there's hardly any contact, and obviously that's what ruins people's careers and stuff, because of that contact. But other football players have made this transition smoothly. I feel like Jeff Samardzija is one of those examples, who was a Notre Dame wide receiver and pitches for the Cubs, was on the Cubs World Series team. So I feel like that's a good example. But I don't expect Tim Tebow, if we want to project when we'll see Tim Tebow at with the Mets in Queens, I think is where they play. I would say that you would probably expect him this year, but they probably aren't going to call him up, I want to say, after the All-Star break, or he's one of those guys that's a late August, early September, or he might just be a next year type of prospect, depending on how the Mets season is going. Recently, the Mets have had a lot of success during the regular season, so if they lean that way, which as a Braves fan, I kind of hope they don't, and obviously I feel like the Mets can be pretty competitive in the NL East. I don't know if they're, I see them as as either a second place or a middle of the road team. I don't see them being the leader this year. Obviously, the Nationals, I feel like the Nationals are going to be a tough win, as they have been the past couple years. But I feel like where Tebow falls into this mix is pretty much how successful the Mets are going to be this year, because if they are successful, then there's no reason to bring him up. But if they aren't, why not? I think the Mets kind of, and it is for any organization that has a guy of intrigue. I I wouldn't necessarily put a rising star or say Tebow's a rising star. I think it would be interesting if he was in the AL division, because they do have a designated hitter, which the NL doesn't have. So I think Tim Tebow would be a good designated hitter, a guy like David Ortiz, for example. And because being in the NL East playing for the Mets, I know that hearing scouting reports on him that he's not really been that great at playing defense, but at the same time he has that beast linebacker built to him. I think he's kind of lost some weight in that regard, but still, like, he's still in shape. So I think he's either going to be a next year guy or he's going to be a late summer guy. But at the same time, I feel like the thing that you can give Tim Tebow credit for, and if you saw that documentary that ESPN put out a while back, and yeah, I know that it was back in 2010, I want to say, but still, it was a while ago, and it was documenting from the time he left the Sugar Bowl to the time he got drafted. And in that documentary, he really showed that he was a hard worker, that he was dedicated to working out. And I honestly, I feel like that attitude that he has, I mean, he's a team guy. He's a professed Christian, and that's kind of been a little bit of his downfall. But still, I think it's great that he stands for something, that he's behind something, that he's a hard worker. And I think the Mets are really going to benefit from him being in their organization. But I just don't know how big of a contributor he's going to be on the field with the Mets organization. I feel like he has the build for it. I just don't, and he has, I think his contributing factors are going to be on offense when he gets at bats, but defense is still a little bit of a question right now, and he's doing a not totally new sport, but totally different sport, and he's in a different environment that he's used to. I think the funny thing about this is that the Mets have found a way to market this, and it seems like Major League Baseball finds, if there is some way, or if there's somehow that they can market something, they always do. And this is the same thing this spring training is. They have Tebow in a 15 jersey, and usually when you have guys that are still in the minor league, they wear 71, 98, 96, 80, like an uncommon number that a baseball player would wear. But nope. The Mets organization, they want to make money. MLB wants to make money. So they have the Mets have Tim Tebow wear number 15. And obviously, like, there's going to be some dude out there who is either a Florida fan or is a Mets fan that's always admired Tim Tebow, and you're going to see that. You're going to see that this year in New York for Mets home games. I bet you you're going to see at least maybe a handful, maybe 20 dudes, maybe even more than that, wearing Tim Tebow Mets jerseys. I guarantee you're going to see that at Shea Stadium. I guarantee that. But that was the midweek best of the rest.
Well, we just want to welcome back to the Fan Show one of our college basketball analysts, Ned Case. Ned, how are you doing today, man?
Doing pretty well. Nice February. We're, about 2 weeks away from the from conference tournament season and then NCAA tournament. So it's it's getting to the good part of college basketball season.
Right. It always seems like it gets really. It seems like everything's kind of going according to a script, and then it seems like come conference tournament time that everything seems to just change on a dime.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's especially if you're those bubble teams, you're just cheering for the regular season winners to win those conference tournaments and make sure you can still get that bid to the tournament. But it's always chaos as soon as we get to conference tournament week, and it usually starts on like Wednesday or Thursday with a big upset and just goes through the weekend.
Right. Just want to start off this conversation, and obviously the big headline coming out of college basketball this week is that the NCAA put a ban on Louisville and just said, hey, your national championship that you won in 2013, it doesn't even exist anymore. Ned, I always kind of thought Rick Pitino was a real sketchy character, and just kind of the way he looked, he always kind of looked like he could be one of the guys in the movie The Godfather, but I never expected that his legacy is going to be just scorned with what happened because of all this that happened in Louisville.
Yeah, and it all kind of came crashing down for him. It was what, those two investigations within about 3 years of each other,
right?
It's kind of if the investigation that just happened with the assistant coaches and the pay for play scandal, if that had been his first one, he's probably still coaching Louisville. I mean, much like Bruce Pearl is still coaching at Auburn. But the fact that they kind of piled up on top of each other, so consecutively, obviously if you're Louisville, between him and Petrino, you've kind of got your baggage with your coaches. I think getting rid of him was ultimately, the correct move. Do I still think he could coach basketball at a high level for Louisville? Certainly, but you've got to do your job as PR and for your program and for your school, and make sure you're taking care of it, and you want parents to trust the decisions your school is going to make where they're sending their kids, and I think Louisville did that in this case.
No, just the thing that I always have that always bothers me about stuff like this is they either punish the kids or they are speaking of the NCAA, they either punish the kids or they punish the university, and I can see the reasoning why, but at the same time I think it's kind of dumb because something happened, and now that you had some sort of scandal going on, you automatically take away wins, and this case they took away a national championship. That always just seems dumb to me, that you think that you have this power now that you can just take away a championship when I saw it, you saw it, but somehow it doesn't really exist anymore. It's not on the records anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin Ware, who people probably remember broke his leg during that 2013 NCAA tournament.
Right.
Had a tweet that went viral that said, I still have this big ass ring. You can't tell me I didn't win a championship, and that's true. If the record books, want to say, 2013 no champion or whatever, that's fine. There's nothing you can really do about it. But like you said, everyone who watched it saw it. Those guys who played in it. That Michigan Wolverines team knows that they lost to Louisville in the national championship game, and it doesn't matter what what a record book may say. I agree it's silly, and I think in 5 or 6 years it'll be Louisville won the 2013 national championship, and a lot of people won't even mention that it got vacated because everyone will just kind of move on, and everyone will realize how silly that is. I know Pitino probably did a handful of press conferences yesterday, but one of them I saw, and one of the things he said I agreed with, which I feel like I don't do much with Rick Pitino, but they were talking about they were taking away those championships because of the parties they had for the recruits, with strippers and drugs and alcohol, whatever it may be. And Pitino said, that those parties didn't enhance my players' chance to win a national championship. In fact, it probably hurt their chance to win a national championship to be doing that stuff. So to take it away for that reason is, a little bit silly. I mean, I think if there had been a situation, more like the Reggie Bush situation at USC, where there was proof that, an agent paid for stuff while he was in college, if that had been the case for a Louisville player, I think there was a little more, rights and grounds to take that title away. But, I mean, nothing those players did gave them a competitive advantage except for just play hard on the court.
Yeah. It seems like the NCAA kind of has this old school mentality that we're just going to take this stuff away, and it's kind of like what you see in the the Old Testament in the Bible, that they're just like, we're going to punish your sons and daughters and their grandsons and so on and so forth. And this was obviously the same thing that kind of reared its ugly head. Now, I know the commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey, threatened the NCAA that they were going to part way. They were going to get the Power 5 conferences to part ways with the NCAA if they don't see any type of change. So with that scenario, if that scenario ever happens, obviously it's going to be the wild, wild west of college athletics. And, if you saw that, what would you think of that?
It's something that, it's been mentioned. I feel like I remember hearing it for the first time, maybe in 2012, 2013. I think it is a little bit of a reality. I don't think it happens, anytime in the next 2 or 3 years, but, I think within the 10 years, you could see something like that where the Power 5 conferences just kind of look at each other and say, look how much money we're generating for our school, for our football programs, for our basketball programs, and look how much of it the NCAA is taking and kind of running, their association, their organization, however they want to do it without us having any kind of say in it when we're, the reason that they're that big institution. I think it is a reality, and I think if they do split to the Power 5, I think there's a good chance that a lot of the mid-majors will follow that Power 5 conference, or whatever they end up calling themselves. Because I think at first, as a mid-major, you think, oh, this is great. Now we'll be kind of the headliner for the NCAA. We won't be on the back burner so much. But then ultimately, you're going to realize, look, it's the same iron fist that they ruled with when the Power 5s were here, and there's probably not going to be the same revenue stream when you lose those Power 5s. There's just not going to be as many people going to a Maction game on a Wednesday as there would be going to an Alabama game on a Saturday. There's not as many people buying a Northern Illinois jersey as there are buying Auburn jerseys or Georgia jerseys. So I think if that move happens, I think that begins the decline of the NCAA.
Right. Totally agree. And if that happens, that would be the wild, wild west, where you would have Alabama in football have 60 scholarships they're giving out for football.
Exactly.
Or it's like their whole athletic department, like every athletic scholarship is a football scholarship. Something crazy like that. That's
what they used to do with Bear Bryant back in the day. He used to just dish out track scholarships and tell them to come play football in the fall.
Yeah, that's the alleged thing that happened in Alabama.
Alleged, sorry.
Alleged, yeah. I just wanted to talk to you about college basketball, the games that have been going on during this kind of midweek. Like I said before, it seems like everyone's following the script so far, and the script hasn't been flipped. But what have your impressions been on just the games that have gone on these past couple of days here at the midweek kind of segment of games?
Yeah, I would agree. Everything really has gone to script. There haven't been a lot of upsets. The biggest upset and the thing that did kind of change the one script is Oklahoma State taking down Texas Tech last night, 79-71. Which now leaves Texas Tech in a tie for first place in the Big 12 with Oklahoma, with Kansas. So as I mentioned last week, Kansas has won or shared 13 straight regular season conference championships. So now it's tied with Texas Tech and Kansas for first place, and they're playing on Saturday. So that loss for Texas Tech was huge for Kansas. Hurt Texas Tech. Obviously it doesn't hurt them in a major way. They're still going to make the tournament. They'll still end up being probably a top 2 or 3 seed. But for Kansas and for Kansas fans, that's exciting. There's a lot of questions. I remember watching PTI and then all the other shows at the beginning of the college basketball conference play, and they're saying, are you taking Kansas to the field to win the Big 12 after Kansas lost 2 Big 12 games? And everybody started taking the field, and Bill Self and his squad just kind of kept chipping away, doing their thing, getting better every week, and now they're 11-4, and they're actually leading the conference by a game and can win the regular season conference tournament, or the regular season title by beating Texas Tech on Saturday. Otherwise, everything kind of went according to plan. Xavier got a big win last night after losing to Villanova over the weekend. Villanova got a big win last night as well. Duke stomped Louisville, who we just talked about. ACC play, North Carolina beat Syracuse. That was actually a pretty good game. I think a game Syracuse really needed to win if they wanted to feel comfortable about being in the NCAA tournament. I think they definitely still have a chance, but just, a win against the top 10 team would have certainly helped boost your rankings. And the other 2 games at least from last night that I thought were interesting was Virginia Tech knocking off Clemson. I don't think it's a big upset, especially with Virginia Tech being at home. But I think Virginia Tech is a team to watch out for in the tournament. I think they're, Sweet 16, Elite 8, good team. Despite last night being a little bit of a low-scoring game, they don't play a ton of defense all the time. So they definitely got to lock in on the defensive side. And then the other game, and more so for the losing team, was Michigan beating Penn State last night, 72-63. That was a game I think Penn State really needed if they wanted to get in the NCAA tournament. If you haven't seen Penn State play, Tony Carr is their star guard. He's awesome. I think it'd be really fun to see him get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. But, with that loss last night, now 9-8 in the Big Ten, 19-11 overall, it's going to be an uphill battle for the Nittany Lions.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to ask you, keeping it in the Big 12 for a minute, right now that it's Texas Tech and it's Kansas are the 2 heavy hitters in the Big 12, and they're going to play each other this weekend. But at the same time, there are a lot of high hopes for Oklahoma, and I know we keep on talking about Oklahoma on this podcast, but it seems like right now that Oklahoma is in a decline, and it's pretty much just the Trae Young show. How did we get here with Oklahoma?
Yeah, I don't really know. They got blown out by 30 on Monday against Kansas. And I think, I think a little bit of it is, I think first off, it's an Oklahoma team that doesn't play a ton of defense. And it starts with Trae Young. And, to his credit, they don't want him to play a lot of defense because he does so much on offense. They don't want to get him in foul trouble. They want him in the game. But when he can't really kind of set the tempo as being that defender at the point guard position, it kind of allows other teams to get into their offense easier without their guards being pressured so much. We've seen them kind of flirt with that zone, which has worked at times. But ultimately, if you don't run a zone well, you're just kind of throwing it out there as a little bit of a last resort. And then finally, he just isn't getting a ton of support. They've got, he's averaging 28 a game. They've got 2 guys averaging one about 10, one about 12. And then after that, it's just kind of guys, who are filling out minutes. So, whether you can blame that on, a lack of talent or maybe just maybe hitting a little bit of a poor shooting or poor offensive stretch. I don't know what you want to blame it on, but the more you watch it, the more you just realize it's probably not going to come back together for Oklahoma. And I think part of that is when you have four guys on a court who are kind of standing around watching, waiting for the ball to come to them, but not really initiating too much because they don't want to get in his way. It's hard to get in a rhythm. And like we said, there were games where teams were saying, Trey can have 40 points, but he's going to have no assists, and we're still going to win this game. And then I think, when you do that, you go through a game where you might only get 4 or 5 shot attempts, then, you just kind of continue to lose that rhythm game after game.
Gotcha. Now, I just want to ask you about Xavier because I thought with whoever's going to win the game against Villanova, and obviously Villanova won this past weekend, that Xavier would slide, but right now in the polls they're still holding down that 4 spot. Obviously, for the Selection Sunday this weekend, they would be a number 1 seed. So where do you think Xavier's future is? Do you think that they're going to continue to hold this 4 spot, or do you think that they could possibly advance and by Selection Sunday, could they possibly be a number 1 seed that you have both Villanova and Xavier, or do you think that they're just going to edge each other out and it's just going to be one of those teams from the Big East that's going to get that number 1 seed?
Yeah, I think we could end up seeing 2, especially the way you said, Xavier didn't drop much in the polls after losing to Villanova this weekend, which makes you wonder, if they play in a conference championship game and it's another close game, you could see both of them, still earning that 1 seed, especially the way, the voters have been voting. That being said, I think probably only one of them ends up with the 1 seed. Unless kind of, all hell breaks loose in the other conference tournaments and you get a couple Cinderella stories winning those tournaments, and so it can take away a 1 seed from, maybe a Virginia or a Big 12 winner, or, even a Duke or somebody. So I think there's a chance. My guess is Villanova will end up with the 1, Xavier will end up with the 2 seed. That being said, Xavier's impressive. They can score the heck out of the basketball. Last night, 89 points, and their star, Trevon Blewett, who we've talked about the last couple of weeks on here, he only had 2 points in that game, and they still put up 89 points on a solid Georgetown team. So they're really starting to get those secondary scores. The senior guard JP Makira, he's really going to be a difference maker, especially if he can come on strong here. He's averaging, just about 12 points, but he had 20 last night. And they've just got, they've got some guys who can score the basketball when they need, and they've got guys who can just score the basketball, kind of when they don't need it. So it's an offensive team, and I think that bodes well for the tournament. Obviously if you hit a poor shooting night, that hurts, but I think their ability to score, even when their star player isn't having a great game, that leads the Musketeers to be thinking about that.
Gotcha. I just want to ask you, looking at this weekend's games, does it seem like there's a lot of intriguing matchups? It seems like a lot of teams that are in the top 25 are just playing like the end of their conference, or pretty much. And but the game that kind of stands out to me that is sort of like that, you have number 12 Auburn playing Florida in Gainesville. Obviously, it seems like the Gators are always really big favorites at the beginning of the season, and then they just kind of go downhill. And right now they're in that downhill spiral because they're out of the top 25. But do you think that this could be a good recipe for an upset that could go the Gators' way?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I think anytime you're playing at home, that's a great chance in conference play where you're comfortable kind of playing against against your opponent. And Florida, they shoot the ball extremely well, especially from deep. That's kind of been their strength. They've got, one guy shooting over 40%, two guys shooting over 40%, a couple other guys hovering right around 39, 37%, from beyond the arc. So they can score the ball, and they play well at home. I don't have their home record in front of me, but I think they only have, one or two home losses, and one of those was to Clemson, which is a very good team. And actually another one was to Georgia a couple weeks ago in that game we talked about. It ended up going to overtime. But I think it's definitely an upset opportunity. However, Auburn having been upset by South Carolina last weekend, I think they're a little bit more focused. I think Auburn kind of needed another loss to regain their focus, especially in practice every day. So I would still lean towards Auburn, but could definitely see the Gators, making a run. And if this game's close, in the last 10 minutes of the second half, with that home crowd, I think Florida will have a good chance.
Well, there you go. I know. I don't think in college basketball it's never too early to talk about Duke, North Carolina, because obviously that game's next weekend, and I don't want you to give too much away, Ned. But are you looking forward to seeing that game, to seeing that rematch again? That's going to be in Cameron indoor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think since that win, UNC's, reeled off 6 straight wins. And since that loss, Duke's made that change of switching Grayson Allen to the point guard position. And they've won 4 or 5 in a row. And he's averaging up over 20 points in all those games. So, I think both those teams learned a lot from that game. I think Duke kind of had a chance to look in the mirror and evaluate itself and decide, how they wanted to attack the second portion of the season. And I think for North Carolina, it was a team that was a little bit on a decline, but they fought and clawed for that win, and they kind of found something, and they've been rolling with it since. So it's going to be a really good game. Both teams are back in the top 10. And obviously any game in Cameron is going to be really fun to watch. The big question is, especially for Duke fans, is, when are we going to see Marvin Bagley III come back? He hasn't played the last 4 games, starting with that Georgia Tech game. I think he's still still leading the ACC in points per game and rebounding per game. And Duke hasn't really seemed to miss a stride without him. But, you're obviously a better team with a player like him in the lineup, and I don't think putting him in the lineup is going to disrupt any flow. I mean, they've got, a guy like Javin DeLaurier starting who averages, 4 points and 8 rebounds. And while those are great minutes, you plug 21 points and 11 rebounds in for that spot, it's going to be more successful.
Gotcha. Well, I hope that I can have you on the podcast next week, because we'll definitely dive into that matchup a lot more and into more depth. But for the meanwhile, just kind of bringing it back to the local teams here in the Atlanta area. I know right now that we've kind of had overcast skies, and but it looks like the sun is out today, and those things are kind of clearing out. But if you drive by the McCamish Pavilion, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a black cloud over there. That right now is just staying over there, because just with the situation with Josh Pastner, obviously some really sketchy details have come out, and more details have come out with that story. I don't feel like that. I still kind of feel like it's an incomplete story. There are more details that I feel like that need to come out for me to have a really open opinion on the situation. But still, do you think, like, this kind of raises the red flag for the NCAA to come in and investigate?
Yeah, I think it does. I think these situations are never black and white, and there's always going to be 2 sides to the story. I think, especially for Georgia Tech fans, the fact that they're 4-12 in the ACC kind of doesn't doesn't help anything. It's kind of like, you know, we're over the season. We're not really worried about that. Let's focus on what's going on with our coach. So I think it brings it to the forefront a little bit more there. But, you know, I mean, again, it's you know, it's one of those things that you don't want to speak too soon on. Because,
Right.
you know, there's really, you know, either person you defend, you know, could come back and hurt you. But it's an interesting story, like you said. I mean, the details need to continue to come and to get some more here and there. But I think for Georgia Tech, you're just the frustration's so real. You know, you kind of thought you were getting something last year. It's been a step back this year. You know, you still believe in your coach as far as what he can do on the court, but, you know, now there's all this, you know, off-field controversy and distractions, and you know, if the NCAA gets involved now, if you're Georgia Tech, you got to decide, you know, is this something we want to go through and put our student athletes through, or do we kind of just want to say, you know, we're only 2 years into this rebuild, let's scrap it and find somebody else.
Right.
You know, I think that's a decision they have to make. Like I said a few weeks ago, I think they really like Josh Pastner. You know, I think he's a very good coach. You know, obviously taking over at Memphis after Calipari left. But
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, a lot of stuff comes before the court.
Well, let me just ask you this, since you have a background as a lacrosse coach, and because one of the main details of the story is that he knew a guy through his past that that's pretty much down on his luck and going through a lot of different life situations, and he let this guy be I don't want to say a part of the team, but he gave him a lot of exposure, especially if he gets to ride on the team bus to away games. So I just want to know from a coaching perspective, why would you have someone like that so involved and so exposed to your program?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I think as a coach you have something like that is personal relationships. I mean, I don't think it often benefits the players. Not that it's a major distraction by any means. I mean, you know, they know what they have to do. They're kind of in their zone. But I think it's just a little bit weird, and it's, you know, it raises a lot of questions as kind of to, you know, Pastner's, you know, character and what exactly his goal is with, you know, with this team. Is it about the team, or is it about the team but also taking care of, you know, maybe some old relationships you've had?
Well, let me ask you this.
Yep.
Is it one of those things where it's like, you know, this guy's gone through stuff, and is it one of those things where you want this guy to share his story so your kids don't have to go through that? Or also, too, is another thing, if you end up in life going through this is a way to get out. Do you think it's one of those kind of redemptive kind of story narratives that he wants his kids to be exposed to, because obviously in college you haven't gone through life yet, and
right.
you want to have, I get as coaches, you probably want to have someone in your program that's gone through life and has made some bad choices, and so you to show your kids what the world really looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some truth to that. But, you know, I mean, at the same time, you know, I mean, you could have him come talk to the team a couple times a year and not have
right.
him still kind of be as close as he seems to be. You know, it's a little bit, not a lot like, but, you know, if you've seen the U Part 2 30 for 30s, you know, one of their donors was big, kind of like that, part of the program. His name was Neville something. You know, but the players would always talk about how, you know, they'd come out of the tunnel to run on the field on game day, and he would be there giving them high fives, and this guy would always be around practice. And, you know, they kind of, you know, some guys liked him, some guys didn't really like him or didn't care for him to be there. So it almost made it worse where it kind of split the locker room, where it was like, you know, he was kind of getting personal relationships with some players, not relationships with other players. So, I think it does more bad than good. To your point, I think it's great as a college coach, as a high school coach, to always have people come talk to your kids about what experience, whether they've been through them, whether they haven't been through them. But I think there's a certain way to do that, and I don't know if this is the best way. That being said, every coach has different ways to coach, and if Pastor believes the best way for this guy to impart his message on players was to be around the program, build a relationship, and the players could trust them. That's one thing. But it's just tough, and college sports are kind of it's all about the players, and you just kind of wonder what they think and feel about this whole situation.
Right. Kind of switching gears now. Do you feel like with Georgia's record right now and what they've gone through with the season, where would they have to? How far into the SEC tournament would they have to go to possibly get an NCAA bid?
I feel like with their loss last night to South Carolina, it's probably going to have to be a win to get in. 15-12, 6-9 in the conference. We talk about the SEC getting better, but to be 3 games under 500 in that conference, that's not something the committee will look favorably on. So I think to get in the big dance, that they're going to have to probably win the SEC tournament. Now, I think postseason play is definitely alive for Georgia. I think if they can, rip off 2 of their next 3 wins in the regular season, and then maybe make a Saturday appearance, even a Friday appearance, even just winning a conference tournament game, I think that deserves NIT, recognition or a bid to the NIT, which obviously it's not what you play for, but to be in a postseason tournament, it's big for players to just keep playing together, for coaches to just have exposure of their team on TV. And even for recruits to come in and just see, this team's in the right direction. I think if you're an SEC program and you miss all postseason play, it's a tough look because of the way the SEC loves their sports. So I think any way the Bulldogs can get into a postseason tournament is going to be a good thing for them. I just think it's a stretch to get in the NCAA tournament on that large bid.
Right. So Georgia fans, if you're listening, it's you have to win the whole SEC tournament to get a bid in the national tournament.
Yeah, and that being said, I don't think that's impossible.
right.
When you look, Auburn is clearly the kind of the top dog, and I know Georgia does have a game left with Tennessee, which would be a good win. But the SEC conference tournament still seems pretty wide open. Again, Auburn is having a lot of success this year, but they're new to the success. They've got to learn how to handle it. They've got to learn how to be the one to get everyone's shot. To learn how to continue to keep that focus locked in through the SEC tournament, through the NCAA tournament, through those weeks off preparing. So it's a new experience for them as well, and I think that's a little bit why you see South Carolina coming on strong here at the end of the year, because it's the Final Four last year and a veteran team that's comfortable with the way the postseason works.
Do you think a lot of kids just kind of I don't know, they know the record, they know the writing on the wall, but they still want to do something with the season? Do you think a lot of kids kind of go in with a mentality of we're going to correct our season here at the conference tournament?
Yeah. Definitely is, and again, I think it starts with your seniors. Having played college sports, you don't kind of realize the finality of the way it comes to a close until you get to your senior year. Your first 3 years, it's at the end of the season, if it's not going the way, always next year. We'll get them next year. We'll figure it out next year. And then when you get to the last month of your senior season, and a lot of these guys, may be the last time they're playing competitive basketball, or or at least in the United States. I think there's something to be said for guys just saying, look, man, we don't really have a choice except for put it all on the line to give it everything we got. And if one or two guys can get hot and ride some scores and the effort is there, from the older guys rallying the troops, I think there's definitely a chance to turn around your season at the conference tournament. And I know a lot of college basketball purists, kind of hate that's the automatic qualifier is the conference tournament instead of the conference regular season. But at the same time, that's what makes the conference tournament great is on that Tuesday or that Wednesday, whenever your conference tournament starts, everybody who's in that tournament is alive to make the NCAA tournament. And so it's, foot on the gas, 100 miles, full speed ahead, and you got to see what happens.
Yeah. I always think that the thing that makes college basketball great is the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it starts even in, November and December with the Maui and some of those other fun tournaments. And then, conference tournaments, obviously, it's fun because everybody's part of those tournaments and everybody has a chance to get in. And then obviously I don't think we need to talk about how good March Madness is. I think everybody can figure that out for themselves.
Right. Hey, you just didn't wander on the podcast.
Exactly.
You knew exactly what you're in for. But thanks, Ned, for being on the show today. Where can we reach you on social media if we want to, if people have just questions about this conversation or just want to ask you things about college basketball?
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter is the place to go, and the at the real Ned Case. Last name is Kaish. So at the real Ned Case. Take a listen. And
again, just want to thank Ned Case for coming on, talking some college hoops. I hope that got you ready for the weekend in college hoops. And this is the Fan Show, and we are a part of fansfavoritefan.com. We are a sports information website that is giving you, the fans, talking about our fan experiences, talking about different topics that are different things that are going on in sports. So it's a great website. We got a ESPN type of score ticker on the top of the website. It is absolutely beautiful. You should check it out after you stop listening to me. And I'm on the website right now, matter of fact, and we have stuff about the Atlanta United with some articles about their recent preseason matchups that they had. We have eToro with some photo galleries from that. So be sure to check out all that stuff, and especially if you want to know what is going on in college basketball right now, because there are scores up on college basketball. I could read you out these scores, but I am pre-recording this, so you'll already know about those games right now, but be sure to check out fansfavoritefan.com, and I guarantee you'll be a fan of it. I guarantee that. Also, I want to just give a little bit of a shout-out. Someone who's been a great example in doing this recently on our SoundCloud page, and that is Suzanne Bogg. So, Suzanne, we appreciate you liking the podcast, because she's just gone to town with the like button. And Suzanne, if you're listening, and if you like what you heard, be sure to hit that like button. Definitely appreciate you hitting the like button on the past couple of podcasts. Love that feedback. That definitely helps us out. So thank you, Suzanne, for doing that. Giving the Fan Show a little bit of a favor there. Also, too, if you want to be like Suzanne, I will let it be known that you like the show. So be sure to hit that like button if you like getting a shout out on podcasts. Also, the best way to interact with the show, the best way to let your opinions be heard, because fansfavoritefan.com is about fans. We're about the fan experience. And the best way to voice your fan experience, voice your opinions, is in the comment section, because we want to know what you think about the show. We want to know if you want to talk about these topics, if you want to talk about what's going on in college basketball, or Tim Tebow playing for the Mets, if you think he's going to be playing for the Mets earlier, if you think the Mets are going to suck, be sure to put that in the comment. If you thought it was too much of an obvious article that I pointed out about the Atlanta Hawks losing TV ratings, if you're one of those people like me that aren't really watching the Hawks on TV this year, be sure to put that in the comment section, because we would love to hear that stuff in the comment section. But let's all be adults and have respect for one another. I'll just say that. But thanks for listening. You guys are awesome. Hopefully I got you through your struggles at work, or I just helped you get to Friday. And by the way, we are having Football Fridays. And what Football Fridays is about is obviously football to me, and I think to a lot of other sports fans, it is a year-round thing. It is content about football comes out year-round, especially where we are, because we are in Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta is the mecca of college football, and everybody around here can talk pro football, can talk college football, maybe even high school football all year round. Especially if you're an Alabama fan, especially if you're a Dogs fan, you can talk football all year round. So be sure to check out Football Fridays. They're awesome. Also, I have a young man that's coming on the show to talk about his recruitment experience, who committed to FAMU. The young man from Towers High School here in Decatur. So if you're in the Towers High School community, be sure to check out the podcast on Friday or Saturday, because you're definitely going to like